Joining me now is a Bellator lightweight fighter who takes on Keely's Mota at Bellator 231 on October 25th in Connecticut. It is rat garbage himself, Mandel Nallo. Mandel, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Good intro.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks a bunch for the time. You are 2-0 in Bellator. Unfortunately, you probably haven't been as active as you would like. According to Topology, you were supposed to fight this past April. The fight was canceled. What happened to that bout?
That fight, so that was the one in the spring. It was, I was ready to fly. So we were supposed to fly to LA on Tuesday. On Monday, got a call that my opponent had been injured. So scrambled, looked for another opponent, agreed to another opponent, and then found out that fell through as well. So it was a pretty tumultuous Monday evening. But, that's the way the sport goes sometimes. Things don't work out. You can't be too upset about it.
So that was back in April. Were you hoping to get back in there sooner than 6 months later?
I was. We signed another contract for, say, like end of July or maybe early August. But that one also didn't work out. So here we are, months later, living the dream.
Yeah. Is it frustrating sitting on the sidelines for so long? I know that's something you're kind of used to. It's actually been a while since you've had more than one fight in a year, unfortunately. How frustrating is it?
It's frustrating for sure, but I try not to think about that. I mean, these are the cards you're dealt. You can't, spill milk on a situation. If you're going to sit there and wallow in anguish over every missed out opportunity, well, then you're never going to seize the opportunities that come your way. So, I try to keep a bit more of a positive outlook when it comes to this career because crazy stuff happens.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. As I said, you're about to make your third appearance in the Bellator cage. I'm just curious, if you were able to, over the past couple of years, fight like even just twice in a year, 3 times every year, where do you think you would be in terms of the featherweight division and the rankings go? Like, how close to the top would you be right now if you were able to stay a bit more active than you have?
You mean skill set? My skill set? Speculating about where I would be as far as how good I think I am.
Yeah.
I just think I'd be right up there. I'd be one of the names that people discuss as, if not challenger to the top 5 in the world, then the top 5 in the world for sure. And I think that if you're an MMA fighter and you're serious in the sport, then that should be your opinion of yourself, no matter what. So, but I truly believe that. I mean, I train with a lot of people. I train with a lot of people with good education, and I think I do very well. But there's a big difference between doing very well in the gym and in the cage, and that's something I've got to learn about myself the more I fight.
Do you feel like now can sort of be the start of you fighting actively? And as you said, like you weren't injured earlier this year, just things happened. The opponent fell out, and you weren't able to find a fight before now. Do you think this fight marks like the beginning of your real run in this division, and hopefully in 2020 you can fight 2 or 3 times? Is this sort of marking the beginning in a way?
Boy, I would like to think so. But like I said, anything
can happen.
In MMA.
Right.
But definitely, I mean, that would be the ideal situation. I fight here, no injuries, things go great. I would fight easily in January or before that. So yeah, ideally, yeah.
Do you think some of it just has to do with guys don't want to fight you? Like looking at your first 2 fights, a 17-second brutal KO, a second round knockout in the second fight. Like, are guys just looking at your record and thinking, okay, not tons of people know this person, but he might like knock me out. He might destroy. Risk versus reward. Do guys just not want to fight you?
I doubt it. I mean, I've only got 7 fights. My footage doesn't look that impressive, apart from the results. But I don't think I've looked my best in the fights that people will have seen. So I think it's more just circumstance than anything. But people are afraid of me. That's also kind of funny. But
Right.
I doubt it, honestly. Everybody in this sport is so. Guys not wanting to fight a guy because he knocks people out, that's crazy.
Why do you feel like you haven't looked your best in, as you said, the fights people would have seen? So I assume you're referring to the 2 Bellator fights. Why do you feel like you haven't looked your best?
I think because I'm still learning who I am as a competitor. I think that is the intangible and largest aspect of fighting is how you are in the cage. I think that, being relatively inexperienced on the day performing, I think that's why.
Okay, and I guess that's one positive of not being able to find a fight and in return not fighting as often as you'd like. I assume you've been obviously you've been training a lot, but I assume you've been sort of progressing and do you feel like you've been getting better and more so than if you were fighting every 2 or 3 months? Because most fighters feel like, hey, I learned something in a fight that I don't in training, but you learn the fundamentals when you're training and not necessarily in an actual 15-minute fight.
Yeah, correct. So I think that if you enjoy training and you train enough, definitely it's a plus. But there's obviously a bit of a fine line to walk there where you don't want to train so much and fight once a year like some guys. And then you don't want to fight 6 times a year and not get better because you're focusing on getting in shape, losing weight, specifying your training to one style of fighter every month, and then next thing you know, you haven't progressed as a fighter in 2 years, and you hit a wall when you reach a higher level of competition. So I think that it's a bit of a fine line.
So finding that balance is important. 6 fights a year might be too many, but 1 fight a year probably isn't enough. What's sort of like the middle ground for you? What's the ideal number of fights in a year for you for where right now?
I really think 2 to 3 is ideal for almost everybody, really.
Okay.
It lets you, it reminds you what it is to fight and what it is to get into that competitive mindset, but it also allows you enough time to progress your skills.
And I know before you signed with Bellator, fighting on the Canadian regional circuit, a lot of fighters up here in Canada struggled to find opponents, and I'm sure that was the case for you and why, even when you were fighting back in Prestige FC in Saskatchewan, you weren't able to, to have 2 or 3 fights a year. When you did sign that deal with Bellator, did you kind of think those issues would go away just being in a bigger, more mainstream organization?
A little bit, but I think that's the perception that people have if they don't know people who are in Bellator or in the UFC. But because I train at TriStar and we have so many high-level guys who are in those higher-level promotions, the guys are struggling to find fights everywhere. It's just a weird sport that way. And some guys aren't. Some guys are flooded with opportunities to fight. But
Fair enough. You mentioned TriStar. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask. As you mentioned, training at TriStar, your teammate Rory MacDonald fighting a day later, October 26th, next Saturday. How nice has it been? I don't know how much training you do with him one-on-one, but how nice has it been training for the same date alongside him? Getting ready sort of for the same fight, not for the same fight, but for the same time and place and day.
No, it's been great. He's such a force in the sport, and as young as he is, he's a legend already, and he's just it's great to have more than one person preparing for a fight in the gym. It just kind of really bolsters the energy and makes everybody feel like it brings the team together. So yeah, it's great.
Now, over these past two fights in Bellator, again, probably not as active as you like, as I said, but with the knockouts, with these performances, could things have gone any better? Two fights in, people love you for just your fight style, for your personality. Could things have been going any better, aside from the fact that, not to stress it too much, but you haven't been fighting maybe as much as you'd like?
Yeah, not really. I honestly would like to have a three-round decision fight, or like a third round, fourth minute finish, just to get the cage time. But really, no. Reflecting back, a win, any win is pretty good.
How important is it as like a younger fighter, a guy who, you're not the most experienced, you don't have 20 or 30 MMA fights professionally. How important is it to not just win by first round knockout, but actually, register and record that time in the cage, as you said?
It's huge. It's like I said, it is the most important thing. You hear about guys, I remember hearing about it when I was watching early fights, hearing about a guy who's a monster in the gym. Everybody gives him so much credit, and then he goes in there and he fights, and it's very unimpressive. And it's not that he's a worse fighter than everybody who trains with him thinks. It's that he doesn't perform as well as he is capable of in the gym. So, like, clocking those hours and internalizing that time is huge. Cage experience is the biggest thing.
I asked you that over these past 2 years in Bellator, if you had 2 or 3 fights a year, where would you be now? And you're also hoping that, this sort of beginning of you fighting active. How long is it before you're a top contender in this Bellator featherweight division? A year from now, where do you sit in the rankings, do you think?
Largely it depends on matchups. If I become a more valuable opponent to fight, and I get some bigger name matchups, I think that I think within a year, with 2 or 3 fights in the next year, I think I'm a hop, skip, and a jump away from the title. So it all depends on matchups, really. Because at the point I am now, I don't think. I think people are really looking for me to fight a big name, and I think that my next opponent this Friday coming up, he's a great a great step up for me. He's very skilled, very experienced, good finisher. But I think that people really put a lot on a name, so I think that's the thing.
It feels like every time Scott Coker is doing a media scrum before an event, he's asked by somebody about when is Bellator coming back to Canada. Rory MacDonald, of course, yeah. Bellator welterweight champion. Julia Budd, Bellator women's featherweight champion, both from Canada, both from BC. You obviously fit into that as well. How cool would it be to see Bellator come up here to the Great White North?
Yeah, that would be a real dream. Be able to fight in Canada on a marquee card, pretty much anywhere. I would assume. I mean, Toronto would be great because that's where I live. Montreal would be very cool. And then I was born in British Columbia, so I think that any of those cities would be a dream.
I didn't actually know you were Toronto because I training in Montreal. So do you go between the two or?
Exactly, I split my time. Like I spend a lot of my time in Montreal, but me and my wife have a house in Toronto. Yeah.
Awesome, Mandel. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, and best of luck to you next weekend.